back to the class, everyone. One of my bigger pet peeves when it comes to roster building is seeing advice out there where someone says that X character really needs high relics just because they're a pilot, when in reality sometimes the ship is terrible, or the extra relic levels to said pilot aren't actually going to trigger some mechanism that's going to win or lose certain battles. That being said, there are some fleet relics that really do matter. So before we do get into the top 10 fleet relics that really do open up or really solidify some really great counters, I do want to take an example of a bad example actually of what we're not going for. This video isn't meant to be like, all you peasants out there, you need to go and relic 9 all of your pilots because that'll give you better results. And while that's true, it actually will give you better results on fleet if you relic 9 everything. What we're trying to go away from is just saying that. And Chewbacca is a great example. Chewbacca is a pilot, and he's actually a pilot for a really good fleet. However, if you leave him at R6 for JML, you're not going to see any different results if you were to take him to, say, Relic 7, Relic 8, or Relic 9. Because, yes, the ship will get a little bit more health and protection, defense, and damage, but that's not actually changing any counter out there. Profundity or Akbar is still going to be the same exact amount of things that it beats now, whether your Chewbacca's R6 or R9, because there isn't a specific mechanism being triggered by the Millennium Falcon being the 1 or 2 speed faster or whatever it is. Now, again, that he's meant to be the bad example, because the rest of examples, there actually are specific things that are being triggered in there that make a difference. And the first one is going to be our good friend Plo Koon. So Plo Koon at R7, he unlocks this really cool thing where his ship automatically becomes 195 speed. The reason why that matters is because Executor can only get to 194 speed. Basically what this allows you to do with the ship is that you can put a force taunt onto Sarge, who typically isn't a great tank if he can't taunt immediately, but you make him taunt right out of the gate, and when he's allowed to do that, Executor can't just immediately run over Jedi Knight Anakin. And granted, this does mean you have to have at least an R5 Sarge from JMK, but most people, again, who have JMK will have this kind of in their arsenal as well. So if you're able to hit that specific speed benchmark, get in front of Executor, you open up the Negotiator to being a real counter against Executor, especially with Marauder right now. It's more alive than ever because Marauder is just a really great ship and gives you a lot of advantages with its kind of busted stats essentially. But Plo Koon really makes the list. You really want him to be R7 ideally. He's actually my favorites right now. Specifically for that, I'm trying to get him up there. He's also going to be in a Star Killer team for me, just because that's kind of how my Jedi are adjusting once I get Leia. But R7 does unlock that. There is an argument for R8 or R9 at that, but we'll kind of get to that later when we talk about IG. Next up is going to be Hux, and Hux actually might be one of the most important characters on this list, purely because he is a part of one of the most budget ship geo counters out there, and that is Finalizer versus the Executor. There's a specific speed that Hux will hit when you get him to R6 and when he has all 60 mods on the right side. They will allow him to get his first reinforcement before the enemy Executor reinforcement comes out. I won't really run all the speed math right now just because it's actually really complicated with how the Finalizer speed work. It gets like 45 speed at the very beginning of the battle and then loses it. But all that being said, if you want to get your first reinforcement out before the enemy Executor, which is important for the normal counter, you have to have at least R6 on him. It can work below that, but you're really waiting on good luck to happen if you don't already have that pre-planned to go ahead and get your reinforcement in, so that you can take control of the battle, keep the Houndstooth ability blocked, making sure he doesn't taunt, and then ultimately just kind of take everyone out. Next one up is going to be our good friend Iden. I do actually like Iden as a ground unit as well. She's a really good damage dealer. She's a leader. She's in the new raid. She does a lot of really good things. But in addition to that, she has a ship. And why the ship is so important right now, it is not only countering the Executor, kind of the comp we've been previously talking about, but it also has a really good chance at taking out Leviathan if you give Chimera all the fancy ships like the Scythe, like the Defender, and the Interceptor. But one of the reasons why higher relic levels can matter here, and it's actually not because of the speed as our two previous characters, but it is going to be about dodge. And don't get me wrong, the added damage and the added health and protection and defense, that is really nice, but this is really what it comes down to. Once you start to tack on those higher relic levels, or really even the beginning relic levels, you start to get to a stupid high amount of dodge where you can actually get up to 40% on the TIE Defender. And while dodge is annoying and it's great that your character doesn't take damage, there's something much larger going on here where the TIE Defender counts as a TIE Fighter pilot. So every single time she is getting that dodge, she's feeding a ton of turn meter to Thrawn, which is how the whole counter works versus Leviathan, because Leviathan does this thing where it zaps your speed, and that's terrible, but then it doesn't matter because you're just getting 50% turn meter the entire battle every single time the TIE Defender dodges, and you do have a way to get foresight out yourself so you don't have to rely on the 40% the entire time, but, you know, the second someone hits you, you lose foresight, and it'd be great if you didn't have to rely on that every single time. And again, Iden's a great character outside of that, but there are some real tangible benefits when it comes to having her ship at higher relics. The other two characters kind of had a magic relic number, like Hux at R6 and Plo at R7. Iden doesn't really have a magic one. It's just the more the better. If you compare like an R2 Iden to an R8 Iden, you're going to see a difference of 10% dodge. So do what you can. I'll probably be stopping at R7, but that's more raid focused than it is anything else. Next up is going to be Sith Assassin. So we've already addressed the Leviathan. If you're going to be doing Leviathan mirrors, whether it be in TW, GAC, Fleet Arena, doesn't really matter, having a higher relic assassin is about the best thing you can do to guarantee wins, assuming you're facing 7 stars to 7 stars. The reason why is because she functions as the turn meter train for the entire team. When an enemy falls below 100% health, all Sith allies gain 25% turn meter. That is including the capital ship. So if you are able to jump up her speed a bunch by getting a high relic on SAS and outspeeding the enemy SAS, assuming there is one, then you can get the turn meter rolling, you can get the foresight up and just take control of the battle because you're getting to do what you want to do before the enemy Leviathan is getting what they want to do. And that works on offense or defense, by the way. The defensive AI doesn't really... There isn't really a way to screw it up with the ship. It just has to hit under or drop the health from 100%. You get more turn meter, and there's not really a way for the enemy AI to screw it up or your AI to screw it up. Now, let's go ahead and talk about IG-88 for a second. Now, go back into earlier into the video, we were talking about Plo. If you get him to R7, he gets that really nice 195 speed, which keeps the Executor from just going and demolishing him immediately. Well, if you get IG-88 to a higher relic level, like R8 or R9, he will actually get ahead of that, and he can go in and stun a crucial character, being IG-2000, in the very beginning of the battle, and keeping, say, Jedi Anakin from being able to do what he wants to do, despite the fact that Plo was able to put the taunt out, or maybe Plo didn't get to put the taunt out because he was stunned in the very beginning, and that adds a whole nother crucial element. And you can end up getting, you and your opponent can get into this weird, like, fight where if you take Plo to R9, you can eventually eclipse out IG-2000. That being said, I maybe don't do that. But if you want to have, or you want to make it a lot harder on your opponents using Plo and Marauder versus your Executor on defense, specifically the triple attacker, take IG-2000 as high as you can on relics, R8, R9, if you're willing to do so, and that will help deter a lot of it just because of the mechanics that happen in the very beginning of the battle. As you can see, we're not really doing that ourselves too much right now, but it is something that we need to be aware of when it comes to getting a bang for your buck when it comes to relic levels on characters. Next up is going to be GK. Now, GK is required at R8, so this is specifically talking about taking him to R9, what happens. And again, we're looking at very specific speeds that we're wanting to hit. If we look at R8 Negotiator, he is exactly at 191 speed. That is also assuming 60 mods. And one of the common counters to beating Negotiator on defense, even right now with Marauder, is going to be the enemy Empire team, starting with Darth Vader, having Interceptor and all the other ships. The reason why the speed on Negotiator matters for this is because if he's sitting at 191 speed, a normal R7 Vader will be able to use his basic in the very beginning of the building, or very beginning of the battle. He will proc target lock because it's irresistible, and then your TIE Bomber will taunt, giving you pretty much a get out of jail free card when the AoE comes up, which is Negotiator's first move. If Negotiator is at R9, Vader doesn't get to do this. Negotiator can go first, and he can just wreck whoever he wants. He doesn't have to get stuck behind TIE Bomber. And the very specific way that you deter this by using your Empire on offense is by taking Vader himself up to R8 and kind of overcoming that one specific speed Negotiator had. It's probably worth saying that a long time ago, there was actually a very specific counter using R9 General Kenobi versus R8 Pietro Executor. It did actually involve using Vader's ship. It's not really that relevant anymore, but that is another bang for your buck relic level you can get from Negotiator, opening kind of your field to either use them on defense and make it a lot harder for budget Empire teams to beat them, or take them on offense and beating the budget executors that you see using that weird counter we just talked about. But those two specific relic levels, taking General Kenobi up to R9 or Darth Vader himself up to R8, can help thin out or increase counters depending on which way you're going. Next up is going to be crew, and we've already talked about the Finalizer versus the Executor counter, and the second most important relic I believe for the team is going to be crew. There's a lot of talk out there about Fu as well, and I think there's a good argument for that, but he really just dies every single time, almost no matter what. And even if he doesn't, it's typically because of really good RNG, where the Xanadu Blood is specifically not double tapping for whatever reason, because RNG said so. What we really want to focus on is the long game. Crew, and again, we kind of said this at the very beginning of the video, we're not just looking for the nickels and dimes in offense and in survivability, but Crew has something extra that he adds to the battle that really does help that offense that he's getting from a higher relic level like Relic 8 or Relic 9. Help it boosts him into the next field, because he is going to be stacking his offense throughout the battle anytime he takes damage or he hits a target locked enemy. So it's not just the relic level isn't just taking his physical offense up and bumping and staying there. He's getting to build on that. The 15% he's taking isn't going to be from this number, the smaller number here. It's going to be taking it from the larger number that he would get at R8 or R9, allowing him to stack quicker, allowing him to kill Houndstooth, get him out of the way, and then take out the other ones, assuming you got stuck behind him in the first place. Pieta's up next, just because if you mirror, if you're doing triple gold attacker, it's really easy to run over the enemy just by AoEing them first, knowing it's going to happen every single time, because 194 is faster than 193, and that's just kind of how math works. You go first and you call it a day. If you're not really mirroring with Executor, it doesn't really matter. I mean, again, it's nice to have everything at Relic 9 for fleets, but again, the whole purpose of this is trying to find specific budget units we can take up to unlock or close counters entirely. Next up is going to be Tarkin, and I debated a little bit putting this one on here, purely because most of the things we're talking about are relics outside of the norm. And Tarkin being Relic 7 really isn't that abnormal, because he's needed at that point anyways to be able to unlock Lord Vader. But I thought it was worth mentioning, you do have to have him at Relic 7 and 60 mods specifically to counter Profundity with how the turn order works in there if you're using the Scythe 4-man lineup. In addition to that, if you don't have 6E mods, you can actually close the gap by applying Zetas. I personally do not want to. I don't really have Zetas for that. It appears so right now, but I'll have Leia tomorrow morning, and that's going to be 6 of those immediately gone. So again, another relic that can help put in another counter for your arsenal so you can have a wider array of things to do, whether you're just trying to make your fleets better so that you can completely rely on them, or maybe you've kind of run out of ground things to at least reasonably take up and you're looking to dominate in another area of the game. So that is going to be it for today. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what other relic out there for a specific pilot has a great interaction that you love, lets you take advantage of and win more battles. Till the next time, stay awesome.